What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Spanko, and today you guys might be wondering what the heck are you doing on Dueling Book and why is it empty? Well, actually you're probably not wondering that because you saw the title of this video, and pretty much today we're going to be talking about the side deck cards that everyone needs to have for the September 2020 format. Now I know we're waiting on a ban list, and honestly I don't know if by the time you guys are watching this video if there's going to be a ban list and they're going to drop a ban list. Now if there already is a ban list, then I guess that's okay, because the whole point of this video is to show you the side deck cards that are going to be relevant with or without a ban list. And the reason I say that is because even with this ban list, I feel like the changes in the meta are not going to be too crazy. It is going to be a Dragoon focused meta, and we are going to need to pretty much be able to stop Dragoon and counter Dragoon, as well as other things. Even with the potential of Eldritch getting hit, Adamantipator getting hit, you need to be able to side deck, and pretty much like Dragoon is going to be a really big threat. And I know that if Halki Firebrax doesn't get hit, then Halk could be still a pretty big threat in that sense. You can't forget that there's still a lot of viable strategies in the format that just are not being used right now. Something like the Numeron engine is not even being played right now just because of other engines, and like the Dragoon engine, for example, is just so good. So that even if there's a ban list, you have to understand that these other engines that are maybe not being played or seeing play right now might be played because now you might need them, or people might need them for their decks to be functional, be better, or just as good as they were before. So before we get into today's video, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. The goal is 5,000. We're at 3,500. I know I can't upload as much as I want to upload right now, but I'm going to try to take weekends to film and edit videos, and then obviously during the week I'm going to be grinding. I have medical school, I'm going to be in class or studying, and exams are going to be coming up. So the thing is, I'm going to be trying to put out as much content as I can for you guys. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So for the first card of today's video and or cards, I want to mention Kaijus. Now, so the reason I said card or cards is because Kaijus are obviously multiple cards over here, but I definitely think Kaijus are going to be very prevalent and very important for the next coming format. And the reason for that is we all know that Dragoon has its own protection, it has a negate, so we need to be able to out Dragoon. And one of the best ways to out Dragoon, especially if you're playing and going second deck, or even if you're just forced to go second and you have to side deck cards in, the Kaiju engine I think is insane. Now obviously I'm going to put Gamma Seal up there for sure. Dogoran is not bad, especially if you're playing something like Dino. You have other options, of course. Slumber is pretty good, don't get me wrong, but the thing is, again, Slumber can be negated, and Slumber can get hit with Ash technically as well. So Slumber is like technically part of the engine, and I don't think it's bad per se. It's just one of those things where maybe not at the moment you need the Slumber, but definitely the Kaijus 100%. But Gamma Seal I'm just going to put up there, and you're definitely going to want to be playing Kaijus for this upcoming format. Outside of Dragoons, like obviously you're going to be wanting to play them because of Dragoons, but outside of Dragoons you can hit other pesky cards, like if someone makes a Borrowed Savage on you, if someone makes a Zexal on you. Now, like that's the thing, like you need to be able to out these big boss monsters or these monsters with protection and whatnot, especially if someone has like an S0 on the field and they don't activate the effect right away because they're scared of an Imperm or something like that, or a Forbidden Chalice. Then what happens is the Kaijus become really good because now, you know, my opponent doesn't activate Zexal and I just go Kaiju, and now they have no opportunity to pretty much activate it, and then I can continue from there. Speaking of Utopia Zexal and cards that could be afraid of it, Dark Ruler No More is next up on the list. Now of course I've seen this card being played in the main deck for many decks, and I personally like playing it in the main deck, but I'm going to classify it as a side deck card because not every deck is going to want to main deck it, especially decks that want to go first and are just really combo centric are not going to be wanting to play this. But Dark Ruler No More, I'm going to put it over there on our list of side deck cards that you need for the upcoming format. Because of Dark Ruler No More's condition where it says neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card, they can't Dragoon it. So again, now we're going back to the whole point of Dragoon, where even after the ban list, this card is still going to be very, very good and very, very relevant, because no matter what gets hit on the ban list, we know that Dragoon is not going to get hit. The card just came out, there's no real format around it yet, so we know Dragoon is going to be the main focus of a lot of decks, and once the ban list comes through, we know for the next like upcoming format, Dragoons is going to be very prevalent. So this card outs Dragoons, also outs those really big combo like Dragon Link boards where they set up a bunch of negates, and if they don't have a spell or trap card like set that they can respond to this, which a lot of the time your opponent's not going to have, especially in those combo decks, then Dark Ruler No More becomes one of those insanely good cards that just helps you break your opponent's boards and pick it apart. So for the next card I want to mention, it's actually two cards. One is Infinite Impermanence and the other one is Effect Veiler. Now Effect Veiler has seen its importance in and out of the meta for the past little while, but the reason now it's very important is because, again, Verite Anaconda is one of those cards that every deck is going to want to make and every deck is going to go into. The only way to really stop it because you actually can't Ash Blossom the Verte Anaconda effect. If you guys didn't know, just because of the ruling, it's cost to send the Red Eyes Fusion, and then on resolution or during the resolution, it activates the effect. So you actually can't Ash Blossom Verte Anaconda, but you can Effect Veiler it, and of course you can Imperm it. Now, like I said, Imperm is also really good against something like Dragoon. If let's say you activate a card and Dragoon tries to negate it, then you can Imperm the Dragoon, stop the Dragoon right there. So there's a really good interaction. But also on top of that, like as soon as your turn starts, if you have the Imperm in your hand, you can activate your Impermanence. You're going to target the Dragoon, and pretty much if that's their only form of negation, then you've pretty much outed that, because they're either going to let Imperm go through or they're just going to negate it. And then if they negate it, it doesn't matter because the negate is out of the way regardless. So Imperm is one of those really good cards as well. Now you could argue Forbidden Chalice is a really good card as well if you're going second, and it actually is not bad against something like the S0 as well. So you could play this. Now, of course, if you guys don't have, you know, the budget for Imperm, of course, Imperm I think has gone down in value recently, but if you guys don't have the Imperm or don't have access to Imperm, then definitely Effect Veiler and Forbidden Chalice are two other cards that you could play to out the Dragoon. You just have to make sure that you use them appropriately. Now, again, Effect Veiler, you're going to want to be hitting the actual Verte Anaconda. With Infinite Impermanence, you can hit Verte Anaconda or you can hit Dragoon. I personally would like to save it for the Dragoon, to be honest with you, because I want my opponent to get the resources out of their deck first. And then once they have that Dragoon, like if I have the Imperm in hand, I'm just going to get rid of the problem card, which is Dragoon. Of course, Effect Veiler, you're going to want to hit on the Verte Anaconda, and then Forbidden Chalice can do either, to be honest. Now, of course, depending on the ban list and how the ban list goes, I think Orcus could be one of those top tier contenders for the next format. And the only reason I say that is because if the ban list does what people think it's going to do, where they're going to hit Eldritch and they're going to hit other decks, Orcus could be one of those best decks. But outside of Orcus, what's another deck that really likes to banish and whatnot? And that is Chaos Thunder. And if you guys saw Jesse Cotton's new Chaos Thunder list, like that's no joke. And post ban list, that deck could be even better, because now let's say something like Hulk is out of the way, Eldritch got, you know, hit, Block Dragon is out of the way, then the Chaos Thunder could be really good. So I think a card that could be really good in the next format is Artifact Lancia, but also something like DD Crow. Now, obviously, you guys might be thinking like, okay, why would you use DD Crow against Thunder? It's not that great. But DD Crowing a lot of the Chaos monsters before they can activate their effects, or let's say your opponent only has like one Light monster or one Dark monster, the DD Crow can come really clutch in that sense. But also, I'm talking about Orcus, and that's why I mentioned Orcus. DD Crow could be really good. Hitting something like a Nightmare, hitting something like a Symbol Skeleton can make it so that they can't complete their combo or they can't finish their combo. And of course, if Orcus, because if you guys didn't watch my video, I believe and I think there's a chance that Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche could actually come back to 1. And if Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche does come back, Orcus could see a lot of play. So being able to DD Crow one of the Phantom Knight monsters or an Orcus monster could completely swing the tide of the duel. And of course, Lancia has always been good against Orcus. Lancia has always been good against those Chaos Thunder decks. To be honest with you, man, like if you activate a Lancia, a lot of the time they're just gonna pass, whether it's Orcus or Chaos Thunder. And those decks could potentially see a lot of play post ban list. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, and I'm not saying these are going to be 100% needed, but what I'm going to be saying is that there is potential for these two to be very important in the upcoming format and very, very important against the best decks in the game. Keep in mind, like Orcus can use something like Dragoon, right? Chaos Thunder maybe is not going to be using Dragoon because they're going to want to focus on their main engine, but being able to stop both those decks pretty much completely in their tracks with something like Lancia and something like DD Crow, that's insane. That's completely insane. Okay, so I completely forgot to mention this in the video, and I don't know how it slipped my mind, but Super Poly is another card that should definitely be added onto this list. So sorry for pausing the video here, but I'm just going to explain real quick. I think Super Poly should definitely be in everyone's side deck, because even with the Dragoons play like we were talking about, Verte is a dark and Dragoon is a dark. So Super Poly automatically breaks those two cards or that board just by itself. Now, of course, your opponent could have much more of a board, but again, if something like Orcus, like we talked about, is going to be meta, then Super Poly is also going to be able to break the Orcus boards as well. So that's why I definitely think Super Poly should definitely be in your side deck. It's one of those things that are very easily sideable against Orcus, against just in general Dragoon decks. So definitely put in Super Poly. Of course, all of these cards that I've been showing you guys so far are either hand traps or like going second cards in terms of the Kaiju and the Dark Ruler, but there are some really good going first cards that I'm about to mention that could be really good in the upcoming format. Okay, so for one of the going first cards that I'm going to mention, and honestly, man, if we're being honest, there's never really been a time where this card is bad, and that is There Can Only Be One. Now, if your deck can play this, I highly recommend playing it. Siding it in going first could be completely, like, extremely detrimental against your opponent or for your opponent, because a lot of the time, especially if they're focused around something like Dragoon, for example, you can't Verte into Dragoon anymore, right? You can't do a lot of your combos because of the there can only be one, and that could be like insanely good and insanely strong. I mean, I don't really need to explain this card too much. We all know how strong this card's been and how in and out of the format it's always been. To be honest, it always seems like it's in the format in some way, whether it's through a stun deck, but I'm thinking that any deck that can play this can actually just side it in going first against a lot of decks, so this way your opponent just can't really out it. If you set up your just minimal board that you want to set up and then flip this, you're in such a good position. Now, I know I already talked about hand traps, but another hand trap that I could see being very good in a lot of decks is Gizmek Uka. So the reason I say this is because if something like Hulk doesn't get hit, right? Now, we've talked about Dragoon, how to beat Dragoon. Obviously right here you guys can see a lot of ways to beat Dragoon, but one thing that I just didn't mention is if Hulk doesn't get hit, I could see Hulk being very important in the future, right? So being able to side deck something like a Gizmek Uka plus a barrier statue. Now, I would recommend barrier statue of the water if we're still talking about Hulk, but it could be barrier statue of the wind if Auroradon is still very prevalent, but I'm honestly just going to be talking about Hulky Fibrax, and the only reason I say that is because I don't know if a lot of people are going to be making the Auroradon combo anymore, assuming that the ban list like hits something of that combo, like hits the Olion or hits something like a Jet Synchron. I'm assuming that won't happen, but even if like a Jet Synchron or Olion is hit, obviously Hulk is still going to be very important. The thing is, Auroradon won't be as much anymore because the combo is going to have to change. So I'm definitely going to recommend a barrier statue of the Torrent here with the Gizmek Uka. They go hand in hand, but of course you could do technically any barrier statue if you really wanted to. Now, I wouldn't recommend this because obviously, okay, against Verte you can use this one. It's like, sure, but then Dragoon is also dark, so it doesn't matter. They can still summon Dragoon. It wouldn't matter. The Gizmek Uka is a card that a lot of people will not play around, and if you guys don't know, it does some burn damage as well, so it could be really good siding in, especially into games 2 and games 3 when you're running out of time. So just being able to do that burn damage is insanely good. So that's another hand trap that I forgot to mention earlier, but I think this card could see a lot of play in the future. It obviously is a format dependent card because obviously if there's one link monster, or if there's a monster that, you know, is very prevalent, then you can use Uka to counter it. But we're talking about Hulk here, so I think Uka could be really good in that regard. Going back to cards that are really good going first, Ice Dragon's Prison I think should be a main deck card, but if you guys are not main decking this, I think this should 100% be in your side deck. And the reason I say that is because this card is just insane, to be completely honest with you. Against so many decks, this card is insane. So if you guys don't know what this card does, you target a monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your side of the field, but its effects are negated. Then you can banish a monster from both player fields. So the reason this card is so good going first, I'm going to put it over here on our list, and the reason I say that is because imagine you're playing against a deck that is very like archetype based, so something like Salamangreat or something like Dinosaur, okay? But we'll talk about Salamangreat or Dinosaur. And you go your first turn combo, whatever. Let's say you don't main deck this, even though I'm a very big like heavy believer that this card should be main deck. If you guys are not main decking this, I think it's really good going first and siding in going first, because it's one of those cards that just hits a lot of things. And I didn't even talk about Salad being potentially really good as well in the upcoming format. For example, let's say we're talking about Dino. Your opponent goes normal summon Ovi, activate Miscellaneous, or activate its effect, whatever, sure. They go Miscellaneousaurus. Then you chain Ice Dragon's Prison, targeting the Miscellaneousaurus, summon it to your side of the field, and then it's going to resolve backwards, right? So Ice Dragon's Prisons, you can target the Miscellaneousaurus as well as the Ovi, banish both of them, and then Missile will resolve or whatever, but that wouldn't matter anymore. So Ice Dragon's Prison right away, you banish 2 cards from your opponent. If you're playing against something like Salad, let's say they normal summon a Salad monster, go into Balinks, you can technically Ice Dragon's Prison at that point. I don't know if you would want to do it right at that point. You would probably save it for later, but technically you could Ice Dragon's Prison right at that point, and then what happens is you'll target the monster in their graveyard, summon it to your side of the field, and then banish both. Now you've banished the Balinks, and we all know how much Balinks is important to Salamangreat, just being in the graveyard. It's a Jaguar target to put back in your extra deck, but 2, it's also protection for them. So getting rid of that could be insanely good. So just in a lot of ways, like, this card is insane, and if you guys are not main decking this, I definitely believe this should be in the side deck for when you're going first. So that's pretty much it for this video. I just want to talk about cards that could be in the side deck and cards that could potentially even be in the main deck for this upcoming format. Banlist or no banlist, these cards are going to be insanely good. Now, I know we all know how generically good some of these cards are. Imperm is obviously generically good. Veiler can kind of see play in and out of formats, but again, because of the whole Dragoon format, I definitely think Veiler should be in there, as well as Chalice. Chalice is kind of on the same boat as Veiler. We have Lancey and DD Crow, which I'm predicting are going to be good post ban list. Hopefully, if you guys, I mean, by the time this video comes out, if there's a ban list, there's a ban list. I want there to be a ban list because I have so many decks that I want to show you guys, but I want to do decks post ban list. I don't want to start recording deck profiles now and then a ban list comes out, right? So I don't really want to do that. I just want to wait for the ban list so that I can put decks out for you guys that are, you know, according to the most relevant information and the most relevant decks, right? So Lancey and DD Crow I predict are going to be really good. There can only be one. Obviously, we all know has always been really good. Uka is another card that I predict can be really good if Hulk doesn't get hit, because even though I want Hulk to get hit, I very strongly believe that Konami is going to do something like hit the Jet Synchron or hit the O-Lion, and in that sense I think Hulk could still be overused and really played in every deck pretty much. So I think Uka could be really good against something like Hulk. And then obviously Ice Dragon's Prison, like I said, this card I believe should be in the main deck, but if it's not in your main deck, I definitely believe you should be siding it. And then these two cards right here are specifically for Dragoons. Obviously, like a lot of these cards hit Dragoons as well, but these two cards specifically, the Kaiju doesn't have to be Gamma Seal, but any Kaiju obviously hits the Dragoons, hurts any deck that really focuses on Dragoon a lot. So Gamma Seal or just any Kaiju in general is just really good. And then Dark Ruler No More serves the same purpose, but Dark Ruler No More also helps you break apart your opponent's big Dragon Link boards or 5-6 negate boards, whatever it is. So these cards are going to be really good in the format. If I missed anything, let me know in the comment section down below. I always want to hear you guys' feedback. If you guys have any potential predictions that you guys want to make, let me know in the comment section down below as well. And as always, if you guys like this video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. And with that, guys, Spanko signing out. By the way, wait, before I sign out, check out the social media. Everything is linked in the description below. And with that, Spanko signing out for real. Peace.
My hands steady, I feel ready, but my legs heavy, I don't get it. How come I haven't hit it already? Still working, I'm still learning, I'm still searching, finally earning something, finally turning something called a profit. If I hear you talking shit, don't get caught in it. I'll be popping off and hit your ass, dropping all your shit. Yeah, I promise this, I got promises, you ain't stopping this. Cross my shit.